Hi, Jeff Spira here again, and today I'm going to talk to you about drift boats. Drift boats are very specialized kind of boats that are intended for rivers and streams. They're really not meant for using in lakes or ponds or bays or the ocean. And they have a number of issues about them that make them very poor for using in those kind of situations. But they work great in fast-moving streams and rivers, or even slow-moving streams, where you're only planning to go downriver in them. So they're intended to drift as you go. So. A couple of the situations is with these kind of boats is that they're very short and wide. And that gives them huge static stability, meaning they'll stay upright in really horribly bumpy conditions like you would find in whitewater or, things like that. They also have a lot of rocker, and this is the fore and aft curve to the bottom. With lots of rocker, it means the boat's extremely maneuverable, so that very low amount of oar inputs will tend to make sure that the boat turns quickly and easily. So they're really intended for high maneuverability in that axis of that rotational axis of rotating along those axes. It's important so that the boat doesn't breach sideways when you're going down the river. So you need to be able to keep it pointed downstream by only using the oars. You also are set up so that you face the direction you're rowing. Well, you face the direction you're moving, and you're really only moving relative to the land. You're not moving relative to the water. So you're not facing aft as you would in a normal rowboat. You would be facing forward in them. So the length, width, and rocker mean that this is a displacement hull, only a displacement hull. You can't get it up on a plane. So as short as the water line is, it means that the maximum speed is really, the hull speed is really in the 2 or 3 knot range, meaning that they power very poorly. I've seen a lot of them used with a motor, and they can move. They move out okay, but it's not very useful as a powerboat. So oars alone are generally sufficient for most of their use. So let me say that again. You're not moving in the water at all most of the time. You're passing landmarks, but that's at a pretty decent clip. But hydrodynamically, you're not really passing the water that you're floating in. The water's moving and you're moving with it, not much faster. All you're really doing with the oars is keeping the boat straight. Drift boats have another important feature, Bosch resistance. So western rivers where these were developed that fall down in a mountainous terrain, they don't they don't run down well eroded stream beds. They go over rocks and trees and other erosive features, and so you smack into them when you travel down the river. So the water you're riding in smacks into these things too. So that's the boat being carried along with it. The same sort of thing happens. So the curved bottom on these boats contributes a lot to their strength. plywood on an outside curve will hold a lot of pressure and a lot of force, and that's contributing to its bash resistance. It's a little bit like the curved bottom of a champagne bottle. And to hold the pressure, it's curved upwards in towards the high pressure thing. So a lot of builders coat the bottom with UHMW, which is ultra high molecular weight polyethylene. This is a material that is used for rock slides and also guides in factories where they're bottling things and they have glass bottles moving along and things like that. It's got much better wear resistance even than steel. So, but it's heavy, and it's that's one of the issues about putting it on the bottom of your boat. So. I used to design scrapers for hydraulics out of UHMW, and a lot of other things that were exposed to a lot of road dust and other abrasive things. So they work well on the bottom of drift boats, but most builders don't usually go that way. They just live with it. It's like building a fine piece of furniture in order to kick it down the stairs. It kind of works that way. So, in any event, one of the things that most drift boats have are replaceable wear strips along the sides, low on the sides, so it's down by the water. So these are going to get beat up as you run into rocks, and these are usually put outside of the fiberglass covering so that you can unscrew them and take them off and replace them. That's a kind of an important feature in most of these boats. So most carry them. Some are wide, some are multiple, as you can see in this boat here. So. I have two styles of drift boats. What I call the Western style, which is intended for these big Western rivers like the Mackenzie River and the Rogue River, and some of these, the Yakima River. And these all run from the coastal high mountains to the ocean, and they run fast, and they have a lot of whitewater in them, and a lot of rocks, and it's typically rough water getting down in them. So fishermen like to fish these. They're usually very heavy with trout and salmon, and a lot of other kinds of fish. So that's what they typically use is these kinds of drift boats, and which I call Western style. You may have heard the term Mackenzie River style drift boats. Great boats for this. Well, they're the only boats really for running down these kinds of rivers. So that's the choice. So they're also suitable for any mountain kind of streams and rivers and anything moving fast, like so not just along the coast from Alaska down to California, but also in other places in the world where they have this. Patagonia, there's a lot of them, but also inland, in Idaho, Montana, Colorado, Wyoming, a lot of places are very suitable for these kinds of things where there's mountainous terrain and rushing rivers through there. Probably the granddaddy of them all is the Colorado River as it goes through the Grand Canyon. That's one where these kinds of drift boats are not only useful, but they're really the only kind of boat you can use other than an inflatable to go through there. So Mackenzie River drift boats have high sides with lots of rocker, and they're built to take a beating. That's kind of the general description of how they work. So. And it's really not useful to have one much smaller than maybe 13 feet or so. So my smallest one is called the Mackinac, and it's It's an ideal boat for 1 or 2 people and rougher water. And it's very sturdily built using ply and frame construction. I probably should have named it on a rougher river, but I do know that the Mackinac River is a popular place for salmon fishing. So that's and it's in Michigan. So it's probably not the best boat for there. And I'll get into the other style in a minute here. So here's a fly fisherman on a Mackinac boat in the Yakima River. Here's one in Washington, and another one that was built in Chile. So I have these in both inch dimensions and metric dimensions. Here's one in Michigan that's being used along those mountainous rivers. My next version is a stitch and glue boat, and it's called the Riverman. It's the classic 14-foot shape and size, and these are popular all over the world. They're built using the edge gluing stitch and glue method, and they're very beefily structured using longitudinal elements and trays and things inside that contribute to the stiffness of the hull. So those that have built them have been very happy with them. This one is in Argentina, in the mountains, in deep in Argentina. So it's a good boat. The guy loves it. So I have a 17-footer in this style as well. It's called the Chinook. It's a pretty big boat, and I designed it for guides mostly. And it's really ideal when the operator sits in the middle, and you've got 2 people in the bow and 2 people in the stern. So it's a good 5-person boat that's popular for a lot of these fishing guides, taking people both fly fishing and other types of fishing along these rivers. So my next series of boats is called what I call Midwest drift boats, and this means it's typically the balance of the U.S., and that would include the Ozarks and the Appalachian Mountains, because they don't have the same kinds of rushing rivers as the mountainous west part does. The stream beds are typically gravel or more eroded flat than you would have out west. So, and most of the time people fish these rivers. They're typically shallow for the streams and rivers, and a lot of times people will drift down. They use the boat as a transport device, and then they'll run the boat up on a gravel bar or whatever, and they'll fish, with waders by wading in the water or from the shore. That's pretty common to jump out of the boat, as opposed to the Western drift boats that you fish from inside the boat all the time. So I cut my teeth on these kind of waters in the Ozark Mountains when I was a Boy Scout. We used to take canoe trips down the Current River, and this is in southern Missouri and northern Arkansas, and it had rapids. They weren't severe or anything, but they were pretty good, mild rapids and whitewater and sunken logs and things like that, and so it's a great place to explore and fish and that sort of thing. So there's plenty of whitewater in the springtime, more so than other times of the year, but it's nothing like the western stream. So Midwestern drift boats have plenty of whitewater capability. You can do just like you would in a western drift boat. Maybe not as severe a water, but it'll run the stream correctly, and you can you spin it around and point it down river using oars very easily. It's still got the rocker and that sort of thing. But the sides are lower so that you can use it for wading, for pulling up on a bar and then wandering in the water and with your waders on and fishing or fishing from the shoreline. So the smallest one I have is called the Ozark Fisherman. And it's I designed it to be a car toppable stand and fish kind of boat. It's ideal for one person. Weighs about 70 pounds or so you can hoist it on the top of your small car or back of the pickup or whatever. And it'll be a good stable stand and cast kind of boat once you get it in the water. And so a step up from that is the 14-footer, and I really designed this for a teenager up in Canada, and that's why it's called the Canadian. His father was a cabinet maker, I think, and so he had a nice place to build it in the wintertime when there was snow on the ground, and he and his friend built it. They did a great job with it, and so. He sent me lots of pictures, and that was the original design for the Canadian. They became a pretty popular boat. Here's one in Pennsylvania that the fisherman likes using along the Pennsylvania rivers, and there's plenty of these been built too. It's a very popular design. I also designed a bit larger one. It's a 16-footer, and it's called the Yukon. It's got more space than the Canadian for a bigger group. This one's in Virginia, and it's made of okume plywood. So it's also fiberglassed over. I don't know if you noticed that in the picture, but if you look carefully, you can see that this actually has been glassed over the okume, and it really came out pretty. I'm really impressed with it. So here's another one near the Grand Tetons in Wyoming, I guess, and it has the seat stands, let's put it that way, are built on tread aluminum cases. So. Which is a great idea. It provides good storage, and it's nice to be able to move around the boat as you're fishing or whatever. So I had a customer get a hold of me and say he wanted one between the 14 and the 16, so I designed a 15-footer, and it's called the Pactola. Now the first one to build it was a guide that down in Patagonia, which is the southern part of Argentina and Chile, but he's on the Argentine side, and he works a couple of rivers with tourists. It's supposed to be one of the great places to fly fish in the world, and he's got some pictures of it on. There's some pictures on my website of it. And the Pactola is kind of a mid-size boat that a lot of people seem to like that size for some reason. So, and it would be great for 3 people. Typically, they make them with 3 seats on it. So if you want any more information on these designs, go to my website, and of course you can download the free study prints that come with these. And remember, the study prints come with a bill of materials that you can use to determine how much it's going to cost to build in your area once you select the type of lumber. So those are my drift boats. Also, please do subscribe to this YouTube channel and hit the bell so that you get notified of new videos that are posted. If you're interested in any of my boats, please go by my website, and it's got lots of great stuff on there. It also has an insider section where I've got additional information, and you can freely download the manuals that I talk about and such. All it takes is you joining and putting in your email address, so I have a way to get a hold of you. But please do that. And again, thank you very much for watching.